Welcome to Refractive Error, the Basics of Astigmatism for V551, Ocular Motility and Refraction. Corneal topography helps us understand the astigmatism and its sources. The primary source of astigmatism when you're younger is from the cornea. Here we can see two corneas and their topographies. The one on the left is with the rule, the one on the right is against the rule. Now, the hotter the color is, the more curvature the cornea has in that location. The bluer or cooler the color is, the more green or blue, the less curvature it has. We can see with the rule, a with the rule cornea has more curvature in the vertical meridian than it does in the horizontal meridian. It's redder. That means it has more power. It's going to focus light more in that meridian than it is in the horizontal one. This is considered with the rule. Against the rule, conversely, has more curvature in the horizontal meridian. So we see hotter colors, in this case 45 diopters of curvature in the horizontal meridian, and a greener or bluer color of 42 or 41 diopters in the vertical meridian. This is considered against the rule because there's more curvature, there's more power horizontally compared to vertically. With the rule, astigmatism has an effect where it creates blur in an image at one plane more than the other. If we look at our example of the with the rule cornea, where we had more power in the vertical meridian, that means there's more curvature or more power like we spoke about. So if we then look at how that affects the image quality, if we have an image with no astigmatism, we see our letter E is well focused. If we then go look at the with the rule astigmatism, there's a blur. There's a blur created, we can see here vertically, where it's fuzzier in the vertical parts of the image, but the horizontal parts of the image are better focused. When we have astigmatism, it creates a couple of different things about the optics. We have now two focal planes within the eye, one that's in front of the other. The distance between these two focal planes is considered the interval of Sturm. The average distance between those two is then considered the circle of least confusion, or the spherical equivalent. That's the average between those two focal positions. Let's look a little bit further as far as the VA and the corneal astigmatism and its effect on vision. At the top, we have an image with no astigmatism. The cornea has no astigmatism, and the E is relatively focused. If we then introduce, just like we had before with the rule astigmatism, that's when power is more in the vertical meridian than the horizontal. We see that same thing with the VA, where the image is defocused in its vertical components, but its horizontal image is relatively still focused. So when we then go to look at a scene of a street or anything like that, we have some view of it, but again, it affects the vertical component more, so things are stretched out in a different direction vertically rather than horizontally. We then go to the against the rule astigmatism. Its focus is now on the horizontal plane where we're blurring things because we have more power on the vertical plane. So the image is then stretched out horizontally differently than vertically. If you look at the with the rule and against the rule might be slightly blurrier, but they're relatively similar because there's similar amounts of blur induced. We're generally horizontal beings. Our horizontal visual field is better, it's wider, it's larger. So against the rule affects our vision more because it destroys that a little more. Conversely, though, let's look at oblique astigmatism. Oblique can be described as astigmatism that is between 30 and 65 degrees, essentially 60 degrees. Anything in between those areas, or conversely between 120 and 150 is considered to be oblique. In that case, we have all meridians kind of distorted equally, and that's much more destructive to vision than either with the rule or against the rule astigmatism. If you look at the prevalence of the population and what happens with astigmatism, when we're young, we have a relatively low amount of astigmatism. On average, about 20% of the population from birth to the age of about 30, 40 years of age has astigmatism. That's the strong black line there. Our 95% confidence intervals are the dashed lines. When we look in that, again, between the age of 0 and 40, the amount of astigmatism is relatively around 20%. As we increase in the age, though, that amount of astigmatism goes up. After the age of 40, our amount of astigmatism increases, and at the age of 80 or 90, assuming you haven't had cataract surgery, about 80% of the population has astigmatism. But why is that? Well, let's look at the type of astigmatism first. From 0 to 40 years of age, the bulk of the astigmatism is with the rule. So most patients you're going to see that have astigmatism, it's going to be with the rule. There's a small amount of against the rule astigmatism and then less oblique astigmatism. After the age of 40, though, that starts to change. Our with the rule astigmatism declines and our against the rule astigmatism increases in amount. Oblique increases a little bit too, but that's relatively stable over time. Again, with age, against the rule astigmatism increases and with the rule astigmatism decreases. Why is that? Well, the primary thing is our lenticular astigmatism or internal astigmatism. As we age, our lens increases in size and it's exposed differently to light. We start at a smaller lens, and as it increases in size overall, it becomes more and more distorted and larger, and that creates a change in our astigmatism. And so the lens is the primary reason why our eye changes from with the rule to against the rule astigmatism with age. And like I said, that's due to light. Our lights are exposed more in the horizontal meridian than the vertical meridian. The lids block light in the vertical meridian, and so we see less light, and so it changes overall the damage to the lens and introduces more astigmatism in the horizontal meridian rather than the vertical, thereby causing against the rule astigmatism to increase over our lifetime. Thank you. The end.